All right, welcome to the Guru and the Good Dude. I am super excited today. I have a special treat. A celebrity friend of mine who I met randomly. Again, another guy I met randomly through Instagram because he was just doing cool shit. John Kaler from the Boerne area. I met a couple years ago because you were posting some stuff about getting into acting. And it's been amazing to watch your journey go from kind of just starting out during the COVID era into now, as of this last week, just releasing your first full-length film. So I'm going to pass it over to you, John. I like to start this show by letting my guests talk about their lives wherever they want to start and tell the story of leading up to where you are now. So take it away.
Hi, everybody. It's John Kaler. I am a Boerne resident, local and proud. Thank you, Tim, for having me here today. And I started acting about 10 years ago. Came into it about 30 years old, and I just started figuring out the business firsthand. So that's kind of how I got started, and then where we are today,
What was your first acting gig?
Well, when I first stumbled onto a set, I started doing background and extra roles in Austin, Texas. And I think the first one I did was The Leftovers. I think that's where I got my start.
What was The Leftovers?
Leftovers was a show on HBO. It had Justin Theroux, and it was kind of like the end of the world type of drama series,
Mm-hmm.
I was on set every day for a few weeks, and I got to see firsthand how the principal actors came in and delivered their work. And from there I got the bug.
Yeah. Even a little bit further back from that, you were into entertainment, though. So, like, I know when we first met, you talked about your what you did through college, man. And you actually just posted a hilarious picture of you back in your music production days with your backwards hat and
Yeah. So
tell me about that, because that was a cool story.
So just like acting, music was really big to me. And when I grew up in San Antonio, there was this huge movement in Texas. It was like the underground hip hop, DJ Screw, Swisha House era. And my friends and I, we'd go out partying and drive around our cars. We always listened to all these groups, from Swish House, Color Changing Click, Third Degree, a bunch of these groups. And from there, I became a fan. And when I graduated high school, I was kind of out in the mix in San Antonio. And I knew I had my 21st birthday coming up. And I said, how cool would it be if I went and approached Third Degree, who was the hottest thing at the time in San Antonio, and hire them to do my birthday party. And so I rented a bar, I rented the equipment, I hired them and an opening group, and they came and did my 21st birthday. And from there, I just started kind of talking game, talking hustle, talking about everything they had going on. And soon after that, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna create and produce my own mixtape, not me on it rapping or any type of musical, involvement, but I'm gonna go pick out the tracks. I'm going to go hire the rappers, get them on, multi-dimensional tracks. And I did that. And the first mixtape I did, it was called Don't Fuck With Texas. And I got Third Degree, Swisha House, who else? Color Changing Click, DSR. I mean, there was a ton of upcoming talent at that time. And when I did that, I pressed up, I think it was like 2,000 CDs. Well, I sold those 2,000 CDs in stores in the Texas area in about 2 or 3 months. And from there, just like I did with acting, years later, I got the bug. The hustle of creating something from ground up, then selling it, and people were loving it. And from there, I went and started my own distribution ring for a lot of these artists who were coming up at the time. And
who was the biggest one? You picked up somebody with a good...
So, yeah, the picture you saw the other day was me and B.O.B. before he got his record deal. And he was just another... What would happen is I had a little bit of cash and a little bit of budget to work with, and I would just approach these artists at concerts, at music festivals, wherever, and throw them a deal, see if they'd bite on it. And B.O.B., before his deal, I approached him about doing a mixtape, hosting it, and working on one. He said, absolutely. Emailed him the script, him and his manager, TJ Chapman, who's responsible for a lot of hip-hop down south. And he did the script, he did everything, put it together, and we dropped a mixtape. And during that time period, I was dropping tons of mixtapes, and I was working with, a lot of artists, getting tracks from different people from Swish House, like I said, and Third Degree, DSR, and I can't even think, Fiend from No Limit. I mean, there were so many people I worked
I feel like there was one other guy though that you had, like almost like a
Killer Mike. Yeah, Killer Mike. Maybe you saw that picture.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
I didn't even know about Killer Mike.
Yeah,
I was thinking it was somebody like Chingy or something. Like, like I can't remember.
I went on tour. I went on tour for a few dates with Chameleonaire.
Chameleonaire.
Yeah, I worked with him. I helped brokerage the deal with his artist who had signed him. His name was Lil Kin Famous, and he ended up, going on tour being Chameleonaire's hype man. He was on a bunch of the mixtape Messiahs, but I think that kind of sizzled out over time. But what happened with me is I loved it, and at first I was making tons of money. I was making tons of connections, and that's when the internet was changing. That's when album sales and CDs just stopped producing, and everything went to the internet.
Yeah.
And during that time period, it was the Wild West, and people did not have an idea of how are we going to make money off of this.
Right.
And during that time period, I left. But to go back to it, who you were asking about is whenever Cinematic Music Group, they're responsible for the Smokers Club tour. They're responsible for Sean Kingston, Nipsey Hussle, Question, a San Antonio resident. And when they got that deal, Question, he was had a huge buzz growing here in San Antonio, and they got this huge budget for him. And he was a fan of my hustle and my work in the music industry. I had never even met him. And he reached out one day and was like, hey, man, I got a record deal. We want to pay you to do some A&R marketing work and just be on the streets firsthand for me. And so we started talking about it. Next thing you know, Johnny Shipes from New York starts sending me CDs. I was living off I was going to UTSA, and I was living at a place called the Highlands right by Costco. I get a call from the apartment agent. She's like, hey, I need you to come down here. Hey, is everything all right? She's like, yeah, we just have a large shipment for you. Well, I go down to the office. The entire office of the apartment complex is filled with humongous boxes. That's when 105,000 Question CDs arrived on my front porch.
My God, how many boxes is that?
And I mean, it was every box. I can't, it's been so long. Every box was like the size of like a moving box.
Oh my
But the
God.
entire office was filled. And then and next thing you know, they wrapped my vehicle. I had this vehicle. It had Question logos and Nipsey Hussle and a bunch of other people. And this was the moment when they discovered Question and Nipsey Hussle.
And so you're doing A&R and you were promoting them.
Yeah.
Were you actually employed, or was it like a contract?
It was a contract. I would get like, I can't remember what it was at that time period, but it's probably like back then, like $3,500 to $5,000 a month they would pay me, and then they'd cover all costs. I would send in expense reports with my fuel or my food or
you were
whatever.
You were just pushing those CDs out.
Yeah. And so locally, that 105,000, I went all around Texas and the southern United States, but a lot of it ended up in San Antonio. And someone listening to this podcast right now will be like, oh man, I remember those, because I still run into people to this day who remember getting those purple CDs.
And from
so,
Question.
Yeah, and we got rid of those in about a couple months, here in San Antonio. And that's when he had the song with Bun B and Sean Kingston called Riding Slow. JR wrote and produced it, so.
Dude, that's super cool. So what eventually happened that kind of led you out of that game, though?
Just like I was going to earlier, is the record business changed. I mean, these stores stopped selling CDs. They slowed down. The small mom and pops couldn't survive anymore, and a change in the industry occurred. And at that moment, I was so tapped out from trying to keep the movement going that I said, you know what? I'm getting out. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to start building that business so I can one day get back to something about me. Because what happened in music is I put all my time, effort, money, weekends, holidays, all into other artists.
Yeah.
And they did well, but at the end of the day, when it was all said and done, there wasn't anything left for me.
You had done your job, but you weren't building a business for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're spending all this time marketing other people and marketing their music, and their careers were taking off, and you realized like, oh, it's hard to do that both simultaneously, right? Like back an artist, be behind them, promote them, and then also have yourself be in that same boat, especially when the money starts to dry up.
Yeah.
When the music industry changed, I mean, artists, even big artists, went from making 5 or 10 million on a deal to like $500,000 or $250,000 or no money at all, And like we were just talking about before we started the podcast, that's happening in the music industry too. Like you were just saying with distribution.
Oh yeah, and the film industry, yeah.
Yeah. And not to jump ahead too far, but I do think it's interesting to talk about coming to where you are today, and then we'll kind of go back. So we're going to jump around your story a little bit. Tell me about your new movie, The Unexpecteds.
So The Unexpecteds is a thriller, dark comedy, action film starring Matt Walsh, Chelsea Rendon, Fransico Ramos, myself, and a few others, Jerry Bednaub from 40-Year-Old Virgin. And it takes place in current times of everything we're seeing right now in society. 4 longtime friends invest their life savings into an influencer who sells cryptocurrency and the lifestyle, to come to find out that he loses all their money. These 4 friends get together and devise a plan to kidnap this influencer, aka John Kaler, Metal Mike, and get their money back and some. And I play Metal Mike in the film, and he's just the typical guy we've been seeing for the past, 3 or 4 years on the internet. You could say Jake Paul meets Guy Fieri, just humongous douchebag. Can I say that on this podcast? Douchebag.
Yeah.
And he is just the fakest of the fake, and he's got a platform to sell crypto and get people to buy into his programs. And we've seen it for many years, but most recently it's become a humongous issue where people are just losing money on the internet investing in these people.
So aside from acting, what role did you have in this movie?
I was an on-set producer, and then I'm helping behind the scenes with some of the other producers. So I guess I'm a co-producer in the film.
Was this one your idea? Who wrote the screenplay?
This was written and directed by Alejandro Montoya Marin, and he's my...
We've been working together for a bit.
Yeah, he's a longtime collaborator of mine.
He also he directed the short that you did recently.
Yes.
Which is actually, I think, the first thing I really saw from you was one of the most recent ones, aside from the one with Lou Ferrigno. That was like a very short 5-10 minute.
Yeah.
And then the newer one, what was it called?
It was called The Wrong Guy. It's a 20-minute long. And so, The Wrong Guy is what I use as my calling card. People like Tim, they see a bit and piece of it, and they say, hey, where can I see more of it? And that's what I've learned about the acting business, whether it's film, real estate, whatever, it's the networking.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had your attention in that moment and you wanted to see The Wrong Guy, I sent it to you.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those films. It locks you in.
Yeah.
And it's a great calling card.
It was really funny. And also, you wrote that one, right? Or
I did. I wrote the original screenplay for that one based off of real life events here in Boerne, Texas.
Yeah.
The film takes place in Boerne, but we shot it in New Mexico due to tax rebates and incentives.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's getting back to the business side of it. But I love that it was based in Boerne. And I mean, theoretically or theatrically. But the movie was really funny. I mean, it's enjoyable. It's your role is hilarious. And like every time you do a new movie, how do you feel like you're growing as an actor, or from the business perspective of what you're doing?
That's actually a really good question. I'm gonna think about that for a second. Let me think. Take a sip of water.
Sure.
I think doing it every day and staying involved is how you grow. Networking, working on the craft, taking classes, investing in your image, investing in everything involved. You have to want it more than the next guy. And that's what you run into in music and in film and in real estate. You meet people, they get a little bit of positivity going for them, and they're okay with that. They like the image, they like the pat on the backs, and that's enough for them. But for me as an artist, it's every step you take, you want more, and what I want is just to be doing this every day of my life and to make films about new topics and stories that haven't been told.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and so that's like that drives your passion, that drives you to continue doing what you're doing. And one of the things you talk about a lot, which we have in common, I mean, I'm a business owner, you're building your reputation, and that is your business. Like as an actor, totally different. I sell houses, but as an actor, you're out there networking and growing and meeting new people. And every time you do, it brings a new opportunity for the next thing. Tell me about some of the great people who you've met through networking.
I mean, that's I'll narrow it down. Okay. So when I wrote The Wrong Guy, which we were just talking about as a short film, I wrote it in 2020 when COVID was beginning. And I shot it under, the COVID safety laws with SAG-AFTRA and everything. But when I wrote it, I was at home just like everyone else with nothing to really do. So I was inspired to write a story. And so when I wrote it and teamed up with Alejandro and we started creating it, we started meeting a lot of people because everyone was tired of sitting at home. So when we started networking and meeting people, we started working with our longtime collaborator. His name's Charles Newman. Charles Newman was in a band called Please, and Please had a platinum song on Empire Records. And so since he had been in the industry so long, he had lots of relationships in the music and film business. And he approached Andy Rourke of the Smiths. And Andy Rourke, without the music behind the film, he watched The Wrong Guy and loved it. And Andy ended up reaching out to Alejandro and I, and he said, I'm in. And so from him seeing it firsthand and a little business behind the scenes, we had Andy Rourke from the Smiths playing multiple instruments and creating the whole sound score for our film. And when the film came out, we went to New York was one of the stops, and Andy came out that night. He brought his beautiful and sweet wife, Francisca, and it was a great moment. Andy Rourke eventually ended up passing away from his fight with cancer.
Yeah.
But he was a really nice guy and so talented.
Yeah, legendary.
Yeah, he was a great one.
I know you've told me that story before, but he did all of the music for The Wrong Guy?
All of the music score.
Wow.
But what I did with that short film is I did it completely legitimate. I went in and I got a song from Willie McGee. Willie McGee's a really talented artist out of Austin. He went to the John Lennon School of Music. I think it was in Liverpool. Am I right? Maybe not. Anyways, we got a song from him. We got a song from several other artists. And I came in and I bought the music completely. Where, hey, I'm paying you. I can't think of the terminology right now, but I'm paying you in perpetuity. I don't ever want to have to come back and pay you again. This is going to be released. It's going to be on the internet.
Right.
It's going to be wherever. And I treated it like a feature film, and that became a calling card. Well, with The Wrong Guy and all the homes that it reached during COVID, there was a lot of interesting people who popped up, whether it was on the internet, in person. And so I got to meet, hundreds, if not thousands, of really neat people around the country due to that film.
Yeah. Yeah, that movie was really fun, man. And that's pretty legendary to meet somebody like Andy Rourke. And I think that's kind of what, when you came and talked at the film club, the San Antonio Film Club, shout out to my buddy Walter Miranda, you talked a lot about how people kind of take that networking for granted or kind of dismiss it when you're in this industry as, they would just focus on the craft. Like, if I just do good enough at filmmaking, it'll get there. But you've proven that it really is about, but you have to have both. You have to meet people.
But there is a ton of people who have no connections to Hollywood before, who aren't that talented, but figured out the business side and the marketing of whether it's their headshots or their self-tapes or their reel. And they're even farther past than me. They just understood the business, and, right when the moment or the opportunity came, they were ready for it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both luck and hard work. So you said you've been at it 10 years, but the last 3 or 4 years, your career's really accelerated. Here you are now, you've had a full-length feature. So talk to me about the process of making a full-length feature film, like all the way from conception to where you are today.
Yeah. So I've probably worked on 4 or 5 feature films. I've been involved in different angles of it. But this Unexpected, I got the script a few weeks before we shot it, and I just loved it. And I had the time to dive in and just figure out who Metal Mike is exactly. And all you have to do is turn on YouTube and the TV for a few minutes, catch an infomercial, and you already kind of know who this guy is.
Yeah.
And once we got to New Mexico, it was time to go. But I just helped anywhere I could on the production day to day. We shot it in about, I think it was like 16 or 17 days in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But it was like my happy place. I was staying in a hotel right next door to where we were shooting. Shout out Hotel Zaz. It's in Albuquerque. It's really neat.
Nice.
It's a motel on Route 66. Is that what?
Yeah.
And it was remodeled, and it's kind of like Austin Motel on mushrooms.
That sounds awesome. You go to Albuquerque a lot because of that, right?
Albuquerque, New Mexico has a very special place in my heart because that's where I've always been chasing the dream. And I'm signed with Tina Presley out there, Presley Talent, and she just loves growing artists. And when she rocks with you, she rocks with you, And right now, the whole industry, it's in a really weird moment. So we're not seeing as many productions across America right now, and self-tapes have slowed down. So right now is a great time to work on the craft, but also get your press kit together, get your business side, get your reel together, because it's going to all come back.
That's really interesting you say that. And is that just a reflection of the current economy, or is that because it's less profitable to make content?
I don't think that's it. I think most importantly, it's what has happened with all the unions realizing what's happening with the industry, and let's just narrow it down to 10 CEOs of these major, platforms not paying artists what they deserve.
Right.
And so, one by one, every one of them, SAG-AFTRA, we went on a strike for a long time. The writers, the Teamsters, everybody has come to terms I can't survive off of this.
Yeah.
And
well, and the writer's strike, everybody thought, oh, well, this will just amplify the use of artificial intelligence for these jobs. And everybody was like, actually, that's not going to happen. There's artificial intelligence cannot yet write with the kind of emotion and fluidity that a human being, a true artist can.
But these corporations, they have things up their sleeves. They have very bad motives. I got my start into SAG-AFTRA speaking. You're like, hey, what the transition? It was very hard to get an acting career going from San Antonio, Austin, because I was living in San Antonio when I first started, and I had to leave town for opportunity.
Yeah.
And the moment my life changed was when I decided to work as a local hire on a featured role for Wonder Woman 1984. People hear that, they get excited, and it's not that exciting. Let me get to the story.
Yeah.
So back then, they were already starting this plan for AI. When I was on set, they were pulling people left and right, extras off the show even, and saying, hey, do you want to make $500 and be part of the DC universe forever? Yeah, what do I do? Come into this room. It's that same type of camera setup you see in The Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling when they have all these lights and cameras. He's on a wheel.
Yeah.
They pay you this money, have you sign off, and you just sold your likeness in AI for the rest of eternity. to DC. They
Wow.
had thousands of people doing that back then. This was
And so they could just drop all those people into the movie as
Yes.
as extras and
Yes.
never pay another extra.
Yeah.
$500.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so I was there. I missed my first Father's Day with my daughter. I was in a hotel. I made a couple friends there, and I just worked on the set, and I ended up getting Taft-Hartley, which is when a director comes in and writes a form with and pays you a SAG union voucher. And if you get 3 of those vouchers, then you're invited to join the union. And joining the union, no matter who tells you what, they're going to say, oh, just be SAG eligible. No, join the union, because all the opportunity and the agencies and everybody else, that matters to get you your foot in other doors.
Wow.
So
Yes. And did you know that before you went in there to play that extra role, like that is a possibility, or that's what you have to do to get to the next step?
I did not know it would happen how it did happen, but I knew that it was a bigger opportunity than I was going to see just hanging out in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people who wouldn't put that money, but I spent my own money to fly out there and just hang out and just try to brush shoulders as much as I could.
Where was that?
That was in Alexandria, Virginia, right by Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was there for a couple weeks, and I had this really cool scene. Where Wonder Woman comes down through the mall in America, and I was cast as the lascivious man, and basically I was just like this creep with a mustache in the 80s with his daughter, and she's on this little ride, and there's all these girls dancing in spandex, and I'm just being the typical guy. Well, that scene got cut, so it's like that whole year I had worked on it. I was like, oh yeah, I've got the scene coming, and this happens.
Man.
And I was so excited. And then when the movie came out, nothing. And so I've had that experience.
But you had no idea that was going to happen, right? Like did you go to watch the movie and then you're like, oh, my part didn't come up?
Luckily it came out during COVID, so it was direct during that time period before the theaters were open. So it went direct to cable, and I rented it. I'm waiting, I'm watching through it, and nothing. And that happens on these really big films. I mean, even a bunch of my stuff on Boneyard, that film I was on, I had a scene with 50 Cent. I was listening to 50 Cent, going out drinking for a year, thinking, oh, this and that. And when the scene came out, it was cut up so bad I wasn't even excited anymore. And so those hard failures also reawake and reevaluate, how am I going to do it next? How am I going to do it different this next time?
Yeah.
And it's a journey, it's an everyday grind.
Well, and I think too, that points to, I mean, everything in life is that kind of up and down, and it's like you have this expectation, it doesn't come to fruition, but I think that you've done a good job of just staying in the moment and staying in the kind of process of things, of getting to where you're going.
I think you said it right. It's like staying in the process. I got to thank my longtime collaborator and mentor, Alejandro Montoya Marin, because he always said something to me, even before we did Perps. We've done over a dozen films together. And he said, hey, man, when you have something hot and you're on the market and you meet people, the one question everyone's going to ask you who knows what's going on is, what's next? And that's that one statement, and seeing it firsthand every time we drop a new project, that's what's kept me going, because you have to be prepared when opportunity reaches your front doorstep.
Yeah.
When someone says, okay, what's next? Well, you got to tell them, okay, the unexpected is next, and then we have this going on and this, and so just hearing that and soaking that in has been a huge thing for me.
Yeah. It made me go pull up your IMDb just to talk about a couple things really quick. You were Chicago PD officer Provenzoli in Stranger Things.
Stranger Things season 2, yes, I got to work with Millie Bobby Brown.
Heck yeah.
For a couple weeks in Atlanta. That was another thing. It's like I was flying out for featured extra roles or one-liners for many years to try to just get the opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't seeing it in Texas. And you turn on the news, right? Every time you turn on KENS 5, you got, or SA Current, whoever, they're promoting, oh, Yellowstone's in town, this and that, and they're promoting it. So people from all walks of life are now getting into this industry.
Right.
You turn on the news and, oh, they're building this big one in Bastrop and this one in Dallas. That's great. It's just the work hasn't hit yet.
Yeah.
So
well, too, there's that component to it within Texas. Like you said, there's certain states that offer these really big tax incentives to shoot there, like completely write off your entire budget almost for shooting in their area, as long as you use locals or you spend a certain amount of money, right?
Yeah.
That's why you like New Mexico.
Yeah. And so most of the states, there's not a minimum. Texas, there had been a minimum for a long time. I haven't kept up with the changes that are happening, but I do know that the Texas Film Commission and a lot of people in San Antonio and Dallas and Austin, Houston are fighting for that, for the artists and for the industry and for the state.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like when recreational marijuana use becomes legal in different states. Like the money that state makes and independent businesses can make is really an interesting thing.
Well, and I find that odd too. I mean, there is a political component to it, I think, that is like Texas politics seems to believe that, the movie industry will bring liberalism to Texas. And like that's the only thing I can think of that makes sense, that why they wouldn't incentivize
stereotype. Yeah,
the stereotype of like keep Hollywood away from our Texas, right? But everybody loves movies. Like,
and that's what's funny is every set I've worked on, I've worked all over.
Yeah.
Worked everywhere you could think of. And everyone, guess what? Everyone you're working with is just like you and I.
Yeah.
They're normal people. This is their job. This is their passion. And, sure, everyone stands on a certain political agenda or view, but it's everyday people on these sets. And that's what needs to also be thrown into their faces.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, there is a good number of great actors from Texas, like and one of my favorite directors, Richard Linklater. I don't know if he's actually here from Texas. Was he from Austin?
He's from Austin.
Yeah.
So neat little story. I got a phone call from my agent. They're like, hey, and this is when they were shooting, I think it was like an Apollo movie. It's like Apollo 10.5, I think is the name. Don't quote me. So I get a phone call from my agent. They're like, hey, there's this real special scene. It's the lead actor from Shazam, Zachary Levi. Is that his name?
I can look it up.
You can look it up. Anyways, they called me and they're like, hey, there's this scene where they need Apollo mission members, working, in this one scene. We know you're not, doing this. Do you want to come in for a day? I went in. I did the scene, moved on, didn't think anything of it. People just keep coming out of the woodworks about that film. And the film was one of those movies where I guess they took it from actual film into it was like a sketch, like a drawing.
Yeah.
So when I see all these guys, they're all the same looking, Caucasian males in the NASA Center, I can't even recognize myself. Can't even tell the difference. But it was actually shot at Troublemaker Studios. So we were there all day hanging out in the warehouse at Troublemaker Studios, pretending like it was NASA. And
this looks pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's one of those kind of it's kind of like oh my God, there's Scanner Darkly.
Yeah,
where it's like painted over the scene. It looks cool.
To go back to one of your question about neat people I met along this industry, there's so many people I met, but I just thought of a really cool story. So we ended up collaborating a bunch with a really cool, neat guy. His name's Matt Walsh. He's been in pretty much all the comedies the last 20 years. When you see him, he's the lead of The Unexpected. That's what I'm saying is we built a partnership through collaborations. We met him. He liked what we were doing. Well, his assistant wrote a short film a couple years ago. And he said, hey, I want to get together. He's like, let's kind of just wing it. Let's guerrilla warfare, come in, just shoot it with iPhones. And, Alejandro and I talked for a moment. Alejandro's like, no, we should shoot it with, a real camera. And so we called some of our collaborators in LA. And we started working with Matt. Well, next thing you know, Matt's like, hey, I can call Chris Angel. He already said he wanted to work on a film with us. And so this film was kind of in the works being put
Chris
together.
Angel, the magician?
The magician. And so I'm in LA. I read for The Righteous Gemstone season 2 on day 1 there. We win an award for The Wrong Guy at Dances with Films. Then we leave to go on set with Matt Walsh. Well, this short film, he reached out to Chris, and Chris was like, I would love to work with you guys. Come on to Vegas. Let's do it. So we shoot, a day or two in LA, and then we go to Vegas. When we get to Vegas, he takes us to his restaurant. I shoot a scene with him. He takes us to, I think it was Planet Hollywood is where his show is at. We shoot the rest of the show in the hotel on his stage with all his fans. He has his huge bodyguards carrying all of our film equipment, which is, when you work crew, no one ever carries your equipment. But when, Chris Angel offers 10 guys who are 7 feet tall to carry it through, you do it.
Yeah.
Chris Angel was the nicest guy I've ever met in Hollywood. He did all of it for free, all out of the strength of his relationship with Matt. He was so generous, so nice, so down to earth. And that was a neat one,
Mind Freak, that was the name of it.
Yeah, that's the show.
I wasn't even looking it up, but I just remember watching it. I was a big David Blaine and Chris Angel fan when I was a kid. That's super cool, man. Yes, and I'm sure you got a ton of stories. You got, 20 movies on here you worked with, and a huge number of actors across the board that you've been there with. So as we go back to the Unexpecteds, you were there kind of from the beginning, or at least 2 weeks before you started filming, going through the filming process. And then tell me about what you're doing now, because you've been traveling all over the place. You've been helping promote the film, right there alongside the other producers. But yeah, tell me about what that's been like.
So yeah, it's been a great experience. So when we shot The Unexpecteds, that was, I've worked with Grammy winners. I can say that officially. Well, now I can say I've worked with Oscar winners, because our sound guy from The Unexpecteds, his name's Philip, he did the sound for Sound of Metal, and he won an Oscar.
No way.
And so
that is one of my favorite movies, man.
So yeah, he's got his Oscar in his house in Albuquerque. I didn't get to see it personally, but several people did. They held it, and heavier than it looks.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really neat to actually work with an Oscar winner, and he was super down to earth, just like everyone you always meet on set, regular people who just love what they're doing. And yeah, that was really neat. Anyway, so going back to Unexpected, we did a premiere in Los Angeles at La Leaf, sold out screening. We did a sold out screening in New York for the New York Latino Film Festival. Then we went to Albuquerque, the AFMX, did a sold out screening there. Ended up winning some awards for Best Ensemble and Best Feature Film there. And we're doing our final descent this week, and we are going to New Jersey on Thursday. We're going to the 30th anniversary Clerks premiere, Kevin Smith's festival, which we're going to for Friday. He invited us to the Thursday screening.
Nice.
So we're going to go there, and then we're going to premiere on Friday night. And then we fly out Saturday for LA, because we're screening our final screening for festivals at the Harmony Gold off of Sunset. And
wow.
It's a beautiful theater if you look into it. It's a landmark, West Hollywood. But the really neat thing is we have Gala Avery, doing the Q&A after. And Gala Avery, she has a really popular podcast, but she also... yeah, she has a really cool podcast, and she has a big connection in Hollywood with writers, directors, and collaborators.
Nice. So man, I am really looking forward. I know you brought me a link to be able to watch The Unexpected, and I can't wait to do it. Well, tell me about what's next, because obviously you're working right now on getting distribution for the movie that you just released, but you always seem to have something in the works. You always are working on the next thing. So what's next for you right now?
So I've got several things kind of in my sleeve. Right now, I am organizing and in the early steps of writing my next thing. And my next thing is a feature film, which I'll have to get Alejandro's help at a later moment, because one thing I learned in any business is you find people who are good in certain positions. And Alejandro's the best writer, director, and just collaborator I've ever worked with. So it's like you have to work with people that it works for you.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to put together this script, and then I'm going to approach him and discuss it. But I have a really neat dark comedy, crime thriller that I already have the blueprint. I just need to come in and take the moment and, write it out.
Yeah.
So that's what I have coming next. My film I'm in, which won awards at Slam Dance, it's called Fuzzy Head, directed, written by Winnie McComb. It just went worldwide as far as distribution. So
Nice.
it's around the world. That movie, I got to work with Fred Malamed, and I was his henchman in the movie. That was neat. And then I'm trying to think about what else. Other than that, it's just back at the drawing table working on the craft.
What does that look like for you on like I know you do some acting classes, or you're constantly like learning new things, but how often are you actually practicing just the basics, the fundamentals?
Daily.
Yeah.
You know why? Because guess what, Tim? We are all actors.
Yeah.
Right now, even though we're friends and we have a relationship, you're acting because there is a certain mask that we all carry for everyday life.
Yeah.
Present ourselves how we would like to be presented, and what we respect and what we love. So every day I'm practicing as a human, but I am also working about 5 days a week, whether it's reading new scripts, reading books, self-taping just for the love of self-taping, or self-taping for my agents.
Mm-hmm.
So taking courses, it's really important you don't waste your money with people who haven't done what you want to do. So finding heroes who actually offer classes or acting schools across the country. Right now in America, you can study with the Groundlings, or you can study with Leslie Kahn, or you can study with James Dumont or Tim Phillips from the privacy of your home.
Yeah.
And so you have to take advantage of it if you're not in LA.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic, man. That actually brings me to another point. You have a whole family. You've got 2 daughters, right?
Yes.
How did they feel about seeing you on screen? Have you shown them your movies?
They have. So the wrong guy, I say the F word about 17 times in it. So they've known what that word was since they could speak. They just don't say it. They're very sweet girls as far as it goes with cussing.
Yeah.
But they are also, when they were first born and acting was just thriving through my blood, I wanted them to be actresses.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I sat back and watched other people forcing their kids into it, I didn't want to do it. But then when my kids started seeing me do it, and they started seeing me in films, and they would be around people who recognized my work and would come up and talk to me, that gave them the bug. So both my daughters, they read for shows in the New Mexico area. They're with my agent now. So
Nice.
we can't speak legitimately about some of the stuff they read for, but
Yeah.
they're getting their feet wet already. And it's crazy when you work with kids, especially your own, and you get them kind of in their comfort zone in the audition room.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter, who is 7, she read for a really, really big show that's not out yet. They're casting her right now. And I went in there, and she had a 2-page scene, a second 2-page scene, and then a 5-page scene.
Oh, how old is she?
She's 7.
Oh my God.
And so the 2-pagers, I came in, and I said, okay, this is your eye line. This is where the camera is. Never look at the camera. 3 inches from the camera, this is your first eye line. Here's your secondary eye line.
Yeah.
If you have any memories, look past the camera right here on the 4th wall.
Yeah.
Kids pick things up so organically, it blew my mind. She did the 2-page scenes memorized on the spot. We literally practiced once or twice back and forth. Then we started shooting the scenes. The 5-pager, I gave her the script. I said, hey, legally, they can't make you memorize this. Let's practice it.
Yeah.
She memorized the first part, then the second part. She's looking at the script and looking back at her eye lines.
Yeah.
And so it just blew my mind.
They're natural.
Kids are sponges.
Yeah.
And they're listening and they're paying attention. So it was a pretty interesting moment.
That'll be super cool if she did. Do you know if she got the role or not?
So she did get the avail check, and it was over a month ago. So I never told her. That's the thing, is if she gets a call back or any type of thing until it's concrete, I don't tell her.
Yeah.
Because she's sitting there, so excited. She's a child. She doesn't understand. And that's the one thing we haven't led into just yet, is the rejection.
Yeah.
As an actor, it's rejection. Being an actor is like looking for a job every day of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You have tons of doors you knock on, and you get tons of no's. But the hardest part of the rejection with acting is you audition for some really neat projects and you can't talk about, and then you never hear again.
Yeah.
And so it's
well, you got to think about it. In the grand scheme of things, there's hundreds of people competing for every available role, and only one person gets it. And also, how often do new people get to break into the scene where it's like not somebody who already has track record? It's not going to be, a Hollywood blockbuster. Like, by the time you get to that point, you've busted your ass for so long to prove yourself. And so it is interesting. You talk about rejection, talk about the resiliency that it takes to just keep fighting for that passion that you have.
Yeah. So, the rejection, it's a funny thing because whether it's a film coming out and your scenes have been cut a little bit, or it's never getting the phone call back, you just have to keep going, and you have to remind yourself on a day-to-day basis or on a monthly basis, like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this to be famous, or am I doing this for money? And those are the wrong reasons. You got anything you do, you play baseball or you sell real estate. Yeah, the money or this or that, that's cool. But why do you do this? It's the passion of finding somebody, hey, I found your dream home, or hey, I got the perfect offer for you. You have to go back to the basics of, why do I do this? And the people who are getting into it for the money or the fame, they get a couple years in, they update their profile picture, and next thing you know, there's nothing, because they weren't getting into it for the right reasons.
Right. Well, for you, I mean, I've heard other actors in interviews describe it as like a responsibility, right? Like that when you become an actor and you take on a role, like it feels like a weight or a responsibility, not just to the people who have created this vision for this thing to come to life, but for that character, like to give that character life. And I've thought about that. I mean, that is a really interesting idea, especially if you're portraying like a real person, or if you're portraying something that could have an impact. What's your reason? What's your purpose to keep doing it?
It's all about the story. It's about telling the story. There's a line you always used to see when we were growing up: be curious, not, judgmental. That's how you have to approach every character. Because if you notice, a lot of my characters that I played, they're all very flawed. When you watch The Unexpected, you're going to see the arc in my character and the transformation that my character does internally through the film. You might not see it physically as it's happening, but you see internally kind of what happens, and you have a responsibility to come into this and not judge the character. Because really bad auditioners come in, they read it, they look at the breakdown, they're like, oh, I'm going to come in and do some stereotypical jerk work. No, you're not completing the mission. You need to come into it and say, okay, so this guy's pissed off. Well, what was he going through? You read a couple, moments back. Okay, well, his wife died, or his daughter was kidnapped. Okay, that brings some reasoning to why he's this way. Well, I don't like when this happens. Or, oh, he road raged on this guy. Well, why did he road rage? Oh, well, he has a temper issue. And you have to develop these characters from curiosity, not judgment. You have to come in to find the best actors. They just find themselves within the character.
Right.
What traits do I carry that and that's the fast way. That's the easiest way,
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, for you, I mean, it's just about being able to tell the story, and I'm sure it's a lot of fun though. I'm sure, like, even though you described the shoot for a full-length movie in 3 weeks, which sounds mind-blowing to me, that seems, really fast. That has to be like the most fun 3 weeks.
Yeah, it really was, man. Like, see, the thing about Albuquerque, New Mexico is it's kind of like, it's different than San Antonio and Austin and other cities. When I say this, it's a very sleepy town. Everything closes at 10 o'clock. It's open till midnight, so they have a special plan, but you're in this town and you're looking at the sunsets, which are always so beautiful, and the mountain ranges, and you've got all the different local cuisine and landmarks there, and it's a different pace of living.
Yeah.
So when you're an actor and you're actually in a town like that or a place like that, it's nice because you can concentrate on the art, the craft, and everything's just real laid back, and
Yeah.
and the people there, they love film.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. So you told me that after this you're heading to New York and then LA for the promotions of the Unexpecteds.
Yeah.
And then you're going to Kevin Smith's
Yeah,
party?
This Thursday.
That's this Thursday?
Yeah, so I'm flying into Newark. We're going to the Clerks 30th anniversary premiere. Shout outs to Kevin Smith and Smod Castle.
Yeah.
And then we're premiering our film there at his theater. So his film festival he started called Smod Castle because he bought the old Atlantic Highland movie theater there, and it's multiple theaters. And so this is like the third annual. Every year we've had a film there.
Nice.
And when we premiered in New York at the New York Latino Film Festival, a bunch of our collaborators from the Kevin Smith circle actually came to New York, were raving about the film. We didn't know we were in yet, but I'm pretty sure they put in a damn good word, like, hey, this film is a whole lot of fun. And so yeah, we've made tons of friends out in New York since we screened The Wrong Guy 3 years ago there. So, Ming Chang from Comic Book Men, and there's a professor named Colin. They're all involved in his circle. So it's going to be really neat when we get up there and, get to showcase our film to Kevin and the rest of the group and all the fans. Kevin Smith has like those diehard fans. They show up dressed up like his characters from movies, and they support everything he does.
That's awesome. Clerks was one of my favorite movies growing up. It's just so uniquely funny. But he's done so many good movies. Like Chasing Amy was one of my favorites early on, and yeah, so that's super exciting for you.
Have you seen Kevin Smith pictures of him over the last few years?
Yeah.
So I think he had a heart attack a while back, and he
lost a lot of weight.
Yeah, he's living a very healthy lifestyle from what I've heard.
Well, good for him.
He looks
man.
good.
Very good. Well, we're coming up towards the end of the cast, and I want to play a quick little game, a rapid fire question game with you. Just as quick as you can, short answer. Gonna run through a few things. You good with that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Who's your biggest acting inspiration?
By far, Danny McBride.
What's your dream role?
I guess star next to Danny McBride.
Oh yeah. Stage or screen?
I'm gonna go with screen.
What's the last movie you watched?
Last TV show I watched was Penguin, but last movie I watched was probably Hitman. I haven't watched it.
Ooh, that was good.
So I read for a role in that, and I read for the role. It's all out now, so I read for the redneck who had pictures of himself with deer, and he's like, "Hey, so do you do this often?"
Yeah,
and it was funny.
In the diner,
in the very first one. Yeah, he has those guys come in. I read for that with my Austin agent, with Tag, shout out Tag, the acting group, and heard nothing. A year later, my NOLA agent reaches out and says, "Hey, they want to bring me back in." That's the dream for an actor, is to, when you do an audition and you turn it in, you sit there and you kind of roll around like, damn, I should have done this differently. I should have done this differently. Well, I had a year of that. So when I had the opportunity to do it again, even though I didn't get the role, I got to serve the character even better for myself, what I wanted to see with that character. So it was an interesting moment, but Glenn Powell being from Texas, Hitman, so that's a fun movie.
It was a really fun movie. It was different. It was definitely different. I liked it. And the twist, well, no spoilers, but it was well done. What was the most challenging role you've played so far?
I think it was when I played myself, John, in Perps. I had just gotten out of learning how to walk again because that was shot in January of 2020, and in August of 2019, I had an accident falling off of a ladder, not wearing shoes. I know I'm not the smartest guy, and I broke both my heels. So I had to get surgery, learn how to walk again, and then when I went on to Perps, I had to do all my own stunts, including kicking out a police car window and climbing out. And
Wow.
so that was the most challenging just because physically I just learned how to walk again. And then I was on set.
That's wild. That was a fun movie too. That was the one with Lou Ferrigno, right?
Yeah.
So good. Do you have a go-to audition monologue? Or do you just always read sides?
I always just read sides. A long time ago, I would do monologues when I didn't have the material because that's what's going to happen. If you're wanting to get into television or film and you don't have the footage of you acting in a film yet, the best thing to do is to do a monologue or to do a self-tape. And yeah, I haven't done a monologue in a long time, but
It seems like you lean more towards comedy, but comedy or drama?
comedy.
Or you could throw in a couple other genres. Is there a genre you like more than comedy?
So comedy is my honey hole. That's my happy place. When I first started acting, I kept getting these cop roles and these serious dramatic roles. And it just didn't organically connect for me at first because I was still a newbie in acting. But as soon as I jumped in and started doing comedy, it just felt a lot more natural. There's an awkwardness I carry. There's a goofiness I carry. And whenever I do acting and I just am myself and I present myself, it just hits a lot harder.
What's your biggest acting pet peeve you see on screen?
Biggest pet peeve is these pyramid scheme movies where, it's an $8 million movie and they give $5 million to a fallen star and then they're scrambling, paying people peanuts on set to work on it. And then it comes out and they get full distribution internationally and locally, and they're just destroying. You turn on Netflix, all these different platforms, and you see these movies I'm talking about where it's a fallen star on some pyramid scheme movie, like I said, where all the money goes to them and no money spent on the production. That's my big pet peeve with.
It's like Steven Seagal or
Oh yeah, there's
I was gonna say Nicolas Cage. I mean, recently Nicolas Cage movies have been killing. Like,
so Nicolas Cage was the first to do it,
yeah,
but if you go back and watch them now, you can't take the craft from that guy. That man,
so good.
he's so good. But he started that, and then a lot of people did it, and they took advantage of the Bruce Willis situation with those, and eventually people had to step in, due to medical reasons.
I feel like M. Night Shyamalan is doing that right now with his name. His new movies are terrible.
I haven't been keeping up with his new movie.
Don't watch them. They're terrible. They're really, really bad. It's like, and then he's putting out one every 6 months, and every one is worse than the last. I haven't watched all of them. I just oof.
Speaking of Steven Seagal, if you're listening right now, go on YouTube. There's a guy, I think his name is like Space Ice. Hilarious. What he does is he watches all these crappy movies and he just gives you his opinion on everything as it's happening. And these Steven Seagal movies, his stunts, everything that I didn't even know some of these movies, were out. But it's a pretty funny podcast to check out.
I will. Couple more questions. Who would you love to co-star with? Danny McBride?
I guess I gotta switch it up and say Austin Butler. Everywhere I go, people are like, "Hey, are you Austin Butler?" I'm like, "No, I'm John. I'm John Kaler." I get that a lot. Tom Cruise and Austin Butler.
Yeah,
really, I'm John.
Yeah, Elvis movie was great. Also, that I really liked the kind of indie movie he just did this year.
The Bike Riders.
Yeah, the Bike Riders. Freaking great. I mean,
yeah,
Tom Hardy's in it, and it's like simple. I watched it with my girlfriend, and she was like, nothing really happened. And I was like, that's why I liked it. It was like dialogue driven, black and white. Like, it's a good movie.
Speaking of those type of movies, a slow burning movie I loved and a lot of people talk trash on was Horizon. I give so much props to Kevin Costner, because even though, they were funding the movie, these big corporations, he got to a point where it's like, all right, the movie's $100 million and they only were going to give him 70. So he went and did the second mortgage, which is not the smartest thing real estate wise to do, to get that additional $30 million from his California ranch or whatever it was.
Wow.
Because he believed in that story. Well, I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but he wrote it 30 or 40 years ago.
Wow.
Well,
now I haven't even seen it.
There's some nepotism. It's on HBO now. That's how well it was doing on the platforms. But I'm going to go back to this. His son, who's in the film, he's probably around 15 to 20 years old, was named after a character in the movie. He played that character.
No way.
So basically, before the son was ever even an idea, Kevin Costner wrote this role about a kid who saves his family in the movie.
And named his
And then when he left Yellowstone, he said, son, we're losing time. You're growing up. Now's the time we got to do this movie.
Wow.
And his son literally plays the same character he was named after.
That's sick.
And it went to the theaters. It bombed, just like most movies, are doing. But then when it went digitally, people started watching it. And then HBO ended up picking it up after they released on iTunes.
Wow.
It's a slow burning Western. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. What actor do you think should play you in your biopic?
I guess I'm going to have to say Craig Robinson.
Craig Robinson. Hold on.
Look him up real quick. He's got a voice for an angel.
Oh, yeah. The guy from The Office. Oh, he's awesome.
Yeah,
I knew the name, and I was like, "Is he really saying that right now?" Like, it must be something.
Double check.
I love that, dude. And what's your favorite line you've ever delivered?
Oh, it has to be from. So a favorite line from The Wrong Guy. People loved, and I came up with it in the booth when we were doing the voiceover. Is basically, I'm about to go commit multiple felonies, and I'm lying to my wife, and I open the door and I talk to her saying, hey, I'm just going to go to the office. And then when I close the door, I say, sweet dreams, my sweet Mija. The less you know, the better.
Yeah.
That was a fun one. People love that one. And then my new film, you're going to watch it. I'm playing Metal Mike in The Unexpecteds. And basically, Metal Mike has an infomercial, which we shot in the Hollywood Hills in this old castle that had a moat and had a complete, river around it. You could see the hole in the wall where Batman came out back in the original Batman, that cave.
Yeah.
And then you look at the other corner, you could see downtown LA. And then the other corner of the property, you see the Hollywood sign. And so that's where we shot it. This same place, when you watch it in a little bit, is where they shot a ton of music videos and movies, but they shot, I think it was Free Falling or Last Chance of Mary Jane, one of the Tom Petty songs at the same castle where all my infomercial stuff is. And so to go back to the line is this, all my infomercial stuff, I was like, being broke is a choice. You're poor for a reason. Those are the type of, influencer, comments you've been hearing for the past 10 years. So to come in and just say these outrageous, reckless, non-true statements, that was a ton of fun too.
Yeah. Yeah, that is awesome, man. Well, I can't wait to watch it. I'm excited to see, what you've been up to and what you're going to do next. Is there anything else you want to talk about, promote before we hop off? Covered a lot of ground.
We covered a lot of ground. I bounced around on a bunch of different really neat ideas speaking with you, but the one thing I'll say is if you want to be a musician or you want to be an actor or you want to be a plumber, the best way to get into it is to do it every day. 10,000 hours to master something. I still haven't reached my 10,000 hours in my opinion, but if you love something, you have to do it every day. There's no other way around it. And if you have a regular job where you think that's stopping you, that's just an excuse.
Yeah.
You have to spend the time. I mean, like today I woke up, it's like, all right, I have nothing to do. Okay, well, I'm going to go read the script. Okay, I'm going to go look at, my website and see if it's up to date. Okay, you just always have to be perfecting the craft and the business. You can't just sit around and say, oh, one day, Stranger Things 8 is going to call me and I'm just going to have a role. No,
Yeah.
all the opportunity happens when preparation hits in the same road as luck. We were talking about earlier, to get an audition today, that's already a win.
Yeah.
Because for every role, white top number 3, that role right there, 30,000 agency submissions have occurred.
Wow.
And anywhere between 10 and 100 they're seeing, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So just getting the audition is a win, but hey, you're not just going to be handed an audition, snap your finger and get the role. There's a lot of competition. So you have to be doing whatever you're doing day to day. So when that opportunity comes, you're ready for it.
That's a great way to leave it, man. I think that's a good life lesson. Well, thanks for joining us, John, and looking forward to watching and keeping up with you. Thanks for listening to The Guru and the Good Dude. Tune in next week for who knows what. Woo!